Hey guys, today we're going to install Nginx on Ubuntu server. So this is Ubuntu 20.04 long-term support version, and it's the server edition. So we don't even have a desktop installed. So you can see here it's Ubuntu 20.04. Yep, this is what we've got running. So let's see here. We're going to start out by installing Nginx, and we're going to go through as much of the setup as we can. And I'm not sure if we're going to cover server blocks, virtual hosts, or like SSL with Let's Encrypt, or PHP Setup, or Extensionless Php. Those are a few things that I've gone over in my guide that goes along with this video. But I'm not sure if I'm going to cover them today. We'll see how far we get. But at the very least, we're going to do our basic setup. Now, if you check the link in the description, I have instructions for everything I'm going to cover in this video and all of that extra stuff like virtual hosts, which Nginx, they call them server blocks, and has instructions for like setting up SSL using certbot and Let's Encrypt. So I have all that stuff in the guide if you check the link in the description. But we'll see how much of that we cover today. But at the very least, we're going to get Nginx installed and working. So we're going to start out by installing the package. So we're going to run sudo apt update just to update the info about the repo. So do that before you install any packages ever. So there we go. And now we are going to actually install Nginx, which is pretty easy. And coming right along here. There we go, Nginx is installed. That's it. Now, that doesn't mean we're ready to go yet, but basically Nginx is installed now. So we have Nginx installed. That's all you have to do to actually install Nginx. That just installs the package. There's a little bit more to know, but that's essentially the, that's the main thing. So we can, let's just check to see if it ran. So it's actually running right now. So we have a few more things we're going to do, but I want to pop open a browser, and let's see here. We're here. All right. We're going to go to 127.0. Yeah, we're going to go right here, and we're going to reach port. This is not going to work actually. So this is on a virtual machine on my desktop, so to SSH to this. So we have it up and running now. If we say wget server1, you can see it got the page, and if we cat index.html, this is your web page. Welcome to Nginx. But we want to see this with a browser, right? So if I exit out of here, now you'll see the way this. Now I'm on my desktop. So from my desktop, I did an SSH to, so I'm using a NAT. I have a natted network for my VM. So this is a little bit of a roundabout thing, but you go to, I SSH to this port and SSH, and so long as I'm SSHing to the local host, it's going to get forwarded to my VM. So it turns out that I'm going to have to set up another rule for this, which I should have done ahead of time. But anyways, let's see here. We can do, this is kind of, we're getting sidetracked, but this is a useful thing to know how to do. If you're setting this up on a real server, you're probably not going to do this. So anyways, set up port. See, this is how I have the host port. Like if you SSH to 12345, it'll forward you to port 22, the SSH port on the server. So we're going to create another rule. So I should have mentioned I'm doing this on VirtualBox. So my server is running on VirtualBox. So if we set up port 8080, and then we say you know what, let's just set it up to be port 80. just port 80. So anything on port 80, if I try to reach port 80 on my local host, as in try to reach port 80 on my desktop, it's going to forward me to the virtual machine that is running my server that has Nginx on it. So I'm going to create this rule that forwards port 80 to port 80, hit OK, hit OK. Now this is my server, this is the console, server 1. We're not accessing it that way. That's a clunky way to access it, but it has no X windows or anything. So we're going to minimize that. And this is, now we're going to SSH back in. So there we go, we're SSH back in. Now let's open that browser back up again. And if we go directly to the 127.0.0.1, that's the local host. That's going to my desktop on port 80, and that's going to get forwarded to my server. So connection refused. So, and I don't know why I said 80. I'm going to do 8080. So that didn't work, but let's change port forwarding. So on the host side, we're going to say 8080. Say OK, OK. And now let's see if this just works. If we go to, so instead of port 80, unfortunately, we're going to 8080. And there we go, it works. It says, welcome to Nginx. So that's the only little hiccup in the process here, is having to add that port forwarding. Now, if you do use VirtualBox to play around in a lab environment like this, that's a great way to, it's great to be able, instead of having to set up a network or put it on your local network or anything, you can just create a natted network that's separate from everything, gets created by default, and you just create that forwarding role, and it's super easy. So now let's say if we don't want this, let's go in here and just, we have a few other steps. So this is basically it. Nginx is installed and working, but there's a bunch of other stuff we can also do. Let's see how far we can get. First thing, we want to change this page just to see it be different. So we're going to go to var www, and we're going to see the HTML directory. So var www HTML. We see it's owned by root. So sudo -vi. You know what we're going to do? Sudo rm. We're going to remove that file because we don't need that. All right. So vi index.html. We're going to create an index.html file. So this is the default file that gets loaded when you access the web server. And let's say HTML. Throw the basic skeleton of a HTML file. Now you don't need to do this if you don't feel like writing your own HTML. If you're using like a tool that generates it, you can just generate your site content and upload it to the server. You know, you don't have to know how to write HTML like this to run Nginx. You can run an Nginx server, and someone else can upload the actual web page. I'm just doing this because I can do it off the top of my head like this. But if you don't know this, don't worry about it. You don't need to know this to run Nginx. I mean, you probably should learn it. It's a good thing to know, but yeah, I'm not inventing any of this. So I should, but anyway, call it my page. Now, down here, we're going to say, let's call this H1 for the header 1, and my page, blah, blah, blah. It works. So there we go. We're going to save this document on our server. Now let's bring our browser back up to the front and refresh it. Hey, there we go. My page, blah, 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 it works. There you go. We now have a web page on our Nginx server. So that's a custom page. Now you don't need to know how to edit the HTML, as I've said. It's nice if you do know it, but you could do all kinds of stuff. Like you could install WordPress here. You could generate these with like a site designer tool or whatever, and then upload them there. You could have your web developer do it if you happen to be like the sysadmin and you just want to administer Nginx, and then you have a developer that does your web development, whatever. It doesn't, you don't have to know HTML, so don't get scared away if you're only interested in running Nginx. But you probably should know how HTML works just to know it. But all right, so moving along here, this isn't everything to know about it. That's just a good demo of how we got it up and running. So next thing we're going to do is say, we're going to sudo service. All right, so we're going to start and stop it. So so for example, now we have Nginx running. We have a few. Yeah, whoops. I need to grep for it. So there we go. We see the process is running. That looks a little cleaner if I zoomed this out a bit, but I zoomed in a lot, so the text is big, so you can read it more easily in the video. Let's see here. What else do we want to do? So we can say sudo service Nginx. And my guide was written, I think, for Ubuntu 18. I think 1804, but I believe, but it's it should work just fine on newer versions. It's identical on 20.04. So we're going to try starting and stopping it. So it's already running, so we can say stop. And now if we search for the process, it's not there. We only see my grep process. And if we try to load our page, there we go, site can't be reached. Now if we want to start it back up again, say start. And do a pscf grep, and there we go, Nginx is running. So let's run this again, and there we go, my page is back up. So you can also restart it, so it'll stop and start it all in one shot. What else? So if you want to enable it, you could do sudo. It's already enabled, but you could do sysctl system ctl enable Nginx, and that will enable it. So it's already enabled, but yeah. So we're using systemd. Systemd has been the thing for a long time now. Yeah, we can disable it if we want to. Now, you don't have to, when you first install it, you don't have to enable it. It's enabled by default. It's good to know how, though. You can disable it like this, so next time you reboot. Now, if we search for it, it's still running, but if we reboot the system, it won't come up if it's disabled. So disabling it just means it won't start on boot. You're disabling the service from auto starting on boot. Enabling means you're enabling it to start up on boot. We're going to leave that enabled. All right, so I'm actually going to destroy this VM when I'm done, probably. But so it doesn't matter either way, and I'm probably not going to end up rebooting it. But if you want to edit your configurations, one nice thing to note that you should do is to run nginx-t to test your configuration. So sudo-t, anytime you make a change to your configuration file, you'll run nginx-t. And this validates that your configurations are good. So the configuration file, etc nginx, nginx.conf, syntax is okay. So no syntax errors. There we go. That's you do that anytime you change it, and then you would restart it. So you would run restart like this. You can run you can use the service tool, or you could say sudo system ctl restart and Nginx, and that also restarts it the same way. So I believe the service tool will just point you to system CTL. It'll just run systemd anyways. The service tool has been around since before systemd, but now it just controls stuff that's in systemd. Or that's how I understand that it's set up. But you can use either of those to restart it. So if you change your configuration file, just restart Nginx. First, test that the configuration is valid so you don't break it, and then restart it. So If you want to verify that the server is working, which we did before with wget, you can also run curl -I http local host, like that, and there we go. It pulls it down and it shows us http 200 OK, the version of Nginx that we're running, blah blah blah. All right, so that's all fine and great. What else can we do? So one thing that you want to do is, so this information could be used by attackers to, help them figure out what version you're running and what you might be vulnerable to, and help them to target you. So when you run a server on, like this is on a VM on a private network, but if you run a server on the internet, pretty much immediately within the first few minutes of firing it up, you're going to have people scanning it. Like people are constantly scanning the networks on, they're just constantly scanning the whole internet for open ports, and once they find an open port, they start searching for vulnerabilities. So even if you start up a web server with no WordPress on it, you'll have people scanning for WordPress vulnerabilities, and if you happen to have WordPress, they're gonna try to exploit any vulnerabilities that they have. But if they can't, so maybe there is a vulnerability, maybe there isn't with this version of Nginx. But if you don't let them know the version you have, they're less likely to even try to attack you if you do have a vulnerability. They're not going to know that you're vulnerable. So the automated scanners won't pick you up as a potential target. So it's good to give away as little information as possible to potential attackers. So let's see here. So this gives away a lot of information. We're going to edit the config file. This is just a good thing to do. Sudo vi etc nginx nginx.conf. So in here, we're going to say server tokens. All right. So server tokens off, and we're going to uncomment this. And then we're going to I think that's the only thing we were going to do here. So we can restart it. Oh, let's just test it first, even though we know it's going to work. All right, syntax is okay. Restart, and now let's run that curl command again. Curl, and it gives us supposedly less information. All right, connection keep alive, last modified, content, Nginx. All right, so here's I guess the big thing that's changed in all of that. Is here it says server version is Nginx 1.18.0 Ubuntu, so it gives away your OS and the version of Nginx. Now it only gives you Nginx. They know you're running Nginx, but it doesn't give anything else away. So what else? It doesn't really filter out a whole lot else. Not that any of this is that incredibly sensitive, but yeah, so that's a small helpful thing you can do. Now server blocks are relatively easy to do, but we're not gonna like I don't have DNS set up on this. I don't have so we can't access this by host name, and I'm not set up for that elaborate of a thing today. So we're just gonna keep this as a simple, quick install of Nginx that gets you a long ways towards it, but and if we wanted to use like SSL, we need a real host with a real actual IP out there on the internet, which we're not. We're just working in a elaborate environment today, so we're not going to do that today. I do plan to set this up on a real actual server. I'm going to set up one of my new sites probably, and just show you how I set that up and how I configure the DNS and how I set up virtual hosts and all that sort of stuff, but not today. So I would like to quick gloss over some of those things. So that's basically it for this demo, but I'd like to gloss over the other stuff that I'm going to go over in the future. Now, if you look at the low orbit, go to, I put this under here and go to, and this is my Nginx guide. Now you'll find this in the link in the description for this video, but so this is my Nginx guide, and what we've covered so far is installing it, starting and stopping it, enabling, testing it, all that stuff. We did the curl. We disabled server tokens. And so what's coming up next in the guide, which we're not going to demo this today, but I'd like to talk about it anyways. I'm gonna actually demo this in a future video when I actually set up an Nginx server on the internet, live on the internet, with like real DNS entries and all of that. So Nginx server blocks virtual hosts. So in Nginx they're called server blocks. Apache calls them virtual hosts. Same idea. So to set these up. I made some notes about the users, like root is the master process that runs this, www data worker process runs as that, and user, this is the user that I usually log in as. I just call it user one because I'm not that creative with usernames some of the time. And this gets write access to the web content, which is how I kind of like things to be. So this runs your web server. This is, I guess the master process for it runs as this, but then like the sub processes, like the worker Nginx processes run as an unprivileged user for security purposes, and your web content won't be owned by this web server. So like say if someone exploits your web server, they're not necessarily going to have permissions to overwrite your data. Anyways, moving along here. So to set up a virtual host, let's pretend you're setting up example.com. So you'll do sudo make dir, like you see here, make dir-p, and in var ww, remember we had var ww html like you see down here. Well, if you you are actually going to have example, instead of just having HTML after the ww, you have your actual host name right here, and then you're going to chown this whole var ww directory to user one. It's the user that's going to control the content. That's the user you run as. That's like the user you work as. Now you don't have to do it this way. This is how I like to do it. So I like to own the web content because I'm editing the stuff anyways as myself. I'm the owner of it, so I'm going to put it there. Now if you had a shared environment with lots of users, you might do things differently. You might want one user that owns the content. You might want to set up a separate user for that, and just give people access to it. But anyways, we use chmod 755, and doing that chowning and chmodding recursively with a capital R. So then we're going to copy, we're going to set up a new virtual host. So you copy etc nginx sites available default to etc nginx sites available example.com, because if example.com is your host name for your new site. So so basically you create a new configuration file for your new site in sites available using this default as your template. So then the configuration, edit the configuration, and you want it to kind of look something like this. So you'll edit your file, and it's going to basically look like this. Tells what port to listen on, tells it to, tells it where your stuff, so you could put your root directory anywhere, but I'm going to put it in, so we created a directory in example, basically right here, and then you tell it what files to load in what order. So if you had all of these files, it's first going to try to load this one, then this one, and then this one, and so on. We actually created an index.html. So anyways, server name, you put your domain name here again, location, and you just want to, basically add a configuration for your root of your web server. And that's pretty much it. That's a basic server block. Then you're going to want to link this. So you put your configuration for your new site under sites available, and then you create a link to that under sites enabled. So you have your available configurations, and then you have your enabled configurations. Enabled configurations or enabled sites is just contains links back to the available sites. So then you set the server hash bucket size to 64. I really forget why you do that, but we do that. And that's something it probably should be default, but it's not. I forget the reason. I had looked it up initially, and it was an important reason. Everyone recommends it, and there's a good reason for that. I did not note the reason for that in my guide here. You should be able to edit the HTML for your site like this. So we did that. We did an index.html, but you're basically going to do something the same, but you're going to put it instead of the HTML directory, you're going to put it under your hostname HTML. So it's slightly different path, same idea. You can test the config. Now this is a little bit more detailed of a configuration change, so you really should test it after doing that so you don't break it. And then restart it. And there you go, you have virtual host. You have your first virtual host created. Now anytime someone goes to example.com, they're going to go to the files that are under var www example.com HTML instead of the default var www/HTML. And now you can create as many directories like this as you want. You could create like 100 different websites on the same Nginx instance. So you only need one web server, and how you can run as many websites as you want with as many domains as you want. You don't pay extra for them. They're all yours. The only cost that it comes is if that if each of these websites gets a lot of traffic, it's gonna, each of them are gonna be sharing the resources on that one server. But if they're all, to start out with, if they're all low traffic or no traffic, then it's basically no extra cost. It's not like with shared hosting where you would have to actually pay for additional hosts, or they're like, oh, you get 10, with this package you pay this much a month and you get 10 websites that you can set up on your account. With this, you set up as many as you want because you're the one setting it up, and it's all yours to control. That's how Nginx works, and how any web server that you administer yourself works. So SSL with Let's Encrypt. So this is pretty easy to set up, all right, so you can skip running the repo if you're running a newer version of Ubuntu. So older versions, you had to add a PPA for certbot, and then run apt-get update or apt-update. Apt-get is you don't run that anymore. With newer versions, you can just run apt. But anyways, yeah, older versions you used to have to add a PPA, which is another repo that contains certbot. Now you don't need to do that anymore. You can just install certbot without adding that. So the next step is you install Python certbot Nginx. That's the version of certbot for Nginx. Then you check your config, reload Nginx, and then you can add a domain like this. So say if you're doing example.com, you'd run sudo certbot Nginx-d and then your domain name. And that will configure certbot for you. It'll give you like an SSL certificate for that domain, which is pretty nice. And you can configure it to you can configure it to actually redirect your old non-SSL site to a new SSL-enabled site. So, like you could run on port. You could run on a regular web port or the SSL HTTPS port. You could run on both of them, or you could redirect your old insecure port to SSL, which is recommended, because then you're going to have one site and Google's not going to get confused about which one is really your main site. It's not going to look like duplicate content. There's all kinds of issues. You don't want to be running on two ports. So, I mean, you do, but you want to forward anything that goes to one port to the other port. So it'll ask you, and you can say yes and have it forward it. Let's see here. Certbot, and that's really something I should be demoing. So definitely we'll need to create another video for this in the future. So run sudo certbot renew dry run. So this will test out renewing it. So it's going to show you, it's going to check if you need renewal without actually renewing it, which is all nice and everything. Now you can so you can open up ports. You can just make sure they're open. So we actually allow, we recommend deleting your regular HTTP port and just allowing Nginx full, which will enable ports 443 for SSL and 80 for regular web traffic. What else? I had an alternate certbot install method because it had some issues with one of the versions that I was trying to install at one point in the past, which is a non-issue anymore. But you can manually pull it down from the from EFF.org. Yeah, these guys right here. So Electronic Frontier Foundation. So yeah, pull it down from those directly with wget if you want. And you can chmod it so that it's runnable, and then you can run it. And we could have done a U plus X instead of an A plus X, but that's fine. So you could run it, and then you can run it and do, this is basically the same command we had above, except above we installed it from the repo. And it should be in the repo even without this PPA in any modern Nginx version, even going back a few years. So, but anyways, if you're doing it manually, you pull it down from their site directly and just run it like this, doing the same thing that we did above. Now, let's see. So I generally like to, another interesting error that came up was an issue with an unneeded IPv6 line in the config, which was causing errors. I didn't document the exact error, but I could not figure out how to get this thing to work. There was some strange issue with IPv6, and this line was, yeah, it was automatically added, and ultimately the solution was commenting it out. So if you're running into errors, one solution might be to comment out this line. You apparently don't need it. So the listen : for 3 SSL IPv6 only, unless you really need to be listening on IPv6. Now, even if your hosting provider is using IPv6, or your server is an IPv6 network, it should be totally fine. You still don't need this. So I would comment this. I just comment this out. Now, this actually is not part of the. This isn't only for this alternate certbot method. I probably should have put this up above, but I believe that was still an issue even when installing it from the repository. So anyways, once you've installed this cert, you do the same thing that you did above. You do, you test it, reload Nginx, and you do a certbot auto renew to check that it actually renews. Now, I believe above we actually said certbot renew dry run, and this way we could actually tell it to renew, and if it's not time to renew, it won't renew anyways. Both ways are fine. What else? You can add it to your cron tab like this. Hit say cron tab -E to edit your cron tab. If you're not root, you're going to want to run that with sudo, and then you're going to add a line that looks something like this to it'll say it'll tell certbot auto renew to run on a regular basis and log out to a dated log file. And anyways, so moving right along, PHP setup. So for PHP, you have to install a separate process. So we do a sudo apt-get install php fpm, and then yeah, make a couple quick edits, blah blah blah. All right, yeah. So so you need to make some edits to this, which it's unfortunate that I'm not demoing this, but we do I guess this expose PHP, yeah, so people can't get information about what version you're running and stuff like that. Fix path info, yeah. So just make a couple quick edits and then restart PHP with this command right here. So like vi the file with this command, then restart it with this command, and these are the two things that go in the file. I should really put these in separate code blocks. Then you're gonna have to make some changes to your server block, assuming you've already set up server blocks. So you're gonna go into your server block and you're gonna create a section for, now note first thing, after index and before index.html, you're gonna tell it to look for index.php. And then you are going to, so if you have a PHP file, it's gonna try to load that first for the HTML file. Now, we are going to, yeah, we basically just add a location for PHP and include our fast CGI php.conf and just this thing here to tell it to use this socket. And .ht, we're just going to deny access to any .ht files, and then, you know, test it and reload it again. All right, now for extensionless PHP, what extensionless PHP is, normally, like let's say you have an HTML file, like you have a file called mycamera.html, because you want to, you know, it's about your camera. Let's say you write a blog post about your camera or something. So just a random topic I'm picking. So you're writing a review of your camera or whatever, and in the file, if it's an HTML file, it would be mycamera.html. If it's a PHP file, it would be mycamera.php. Now, you don't want someone to go to your site like example.org/mycamera.php. Typing in a .php at the end is just a really ugly way to do it, and no one wants to do that. So pretty much everybody configures it to go to, would configure it to go to like example.org/mycamera without the extension .php. Even though your file is in a PHP file or in an HTML file, you don't want people to have to type the extension. It's just ugly in your URL. So it just looks messy. And so you can have this thing that automatically, if you type it in without the extension, it'll automatically add the extension. So we under our location root, we comment this thing out and say try files URI /extensionless PHP. So it's going to jump over to this extensionless PHP location, and we then have a rewrite rule that takes anything, basically anything from, this is using a regular expression, this is start, the caret is start, the $sign is end, and anything in the parentheses is what it's matching, and it has a .* that's any number of any characters from start to end, and it will rewrite it to be, now the $1 is the thing that it matched. Whatever was in between these two things here, in those parentheses, you're going to, that's going to be assigned to the variable $1. Then you basically say it basically gets rewritten to $1.php. So whatever name it had, take that name and add a .php at the end. That's what this line is doing. This line is taking whatever page name the person requested, and it tries adding a .php at the end. And if that PHP file is there, then it will load that PHP file while keeping the extensionless name. And that's how that works. For extra security, we redirected 401. We redirected all error pages to a 404 page, so people can't try different things and get different errors and figure out more. They can't find more information about your server. This just gives away less information, so it is therefore more secure. Another thing you could do, I'm going to get back to that extensionless PHP in a second, but another thing you could do, which I don't do, is you could install WAPITI. I'm not sure how you're meant to pronounce that, but this is like a tool to check for vulnerabilities, and you could check your site to see if it's vulnerable. So you can install it like this and run it against your site like this. Be careful with any of those security tools. Don't run them against someone else's site. It's probably not legal, so don't do it. That said, extensionless PHP on Nginx. So coming back to extensionless PHP, you'll notice this site that I'm running as right now, loworbit.net /Nginx setup. Now that will get, that's not the actual page name. Now, I'm not actually running PHP on this site. Some of my older sites used PHP, but right now I'm using a CMS called Jekyll, which automatically compiles together and builds, it builds static HTML, so I have actual HTML files, but it pulls in all the headers and footers and does a lot of like replacing. It basically builds your site, but when it's built, it builds it as static HTML, so it's completely static. So this is an actual HTML file. So on my server, there's an Nginx -setup.html, and that file, it should be reachable on here, but this if you try to go to Nginx-setup, it's going to it basically it loads the file called nginx-setup.php and returns it as though it were just this right here. And that's how extensionless PHP works on Nginx. And that's everything we want to cover for today. It's unfortunate that I did not demo that stuff today. I only demoed the basic setup stuff, but anyways, that's it. That is it for today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. It helps out a lot. If you have any questions, comments, criticism, leave a comment down below. If you want more information, if you want to find this guide right here, click the link in the description. And if you want to see more content like this, maybe even the update video to this where I do a live server on the internet, or any of my other excellent content, subscribe to the channel and click the little bell icon. And that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching.